You need to move out immediately. I'm pregnant and don't want strangers around my baby. This house belongs to us, not you. She said that in my own kitchen. Then she changed the locks while I was at work, and my brother backed her up, so I kicked them out. Hey, Reddit, I thought living with family meant loyalty and support. Turns out it just meant getting walked on until I finally drew the line. Before it all blew up, let me start from the beginning. My name's Tamara, I'm 28, and for the last 7 years I've lived in the same house with my Uncle Robert and Aunt Linda, and for the last 3 of those years with my older brother Noah and his wife Amber. It's not some big family estate, just a 2-story house on a quiet street with a squeaky screen door and a yard that never looks quite finished. Still, it's home. When I was 19, my parents died in a car accident. One day, I was a college sophomore worrying about exams, and the next, I was sitting in an empty dorm room, not knowing what came next. Uncle Robert, my dad's older brother, showed up, handed me a cardboard box, and said, "You're not doing this alone. Pack your stuff." I moved in with him and Aunt Linda, finished school, and tried to rebuild my life. Robert's a steady man, quiet, hands always busy fixing something. Aunt Linda works part-time at the library, hums while she cooks, and calls me kiddo, like I'm still 10. They never had kids, so when Noah and I moved in, they treated us like their own. Noah's 3 years older, the type who fills a room the second he walks in. Loud, confident, always sure he's right. We used to be close, but after he married Amber, things changed. She's organized to the point of obsession. Everything labeled, color-coded, and her way. Within a week of moving in, she'd rearranged the entire living room. She's polite, but you can tell she likes control. The house isn't big, but it works. Robert and Linda have the downstairs room. Noah and Amber, the big one upstairs, and I've got the smaller one across the hall. There's a 4th bedroom up there, too. But it's basically a glorified closet. Uncle Robert turned it into a cramped office years ago with a wobbly desk and a filing box. My space is simple. Desk, dresser, and a window that looks out on an old maple tree. The fan hums at night. The floor creaks near the closet, but it's peaceful. What most people don't know, what Amber definitely doesn't, is that the house is mine. I was 19 when my parents died. 2 years later, at 21, I bought this place with the life insurance. It wasn't endless money, but it covered a modest house and a cushion. Uncle Robert helped me through the paperwork because I was too young to handle it alone. I didn't want to live by myself back then, and they didn't want me drifting around, so we all stayed together. I've lived here 7 years. Noah and Amber moved in 3 years ago. I paid for everything, taxes, utilities, maintenance, but I never made it a thing. We were family. Life settled into a rhythm. Aunt Linda woke up early to make breakfast. Uncle Robert tinkered in the garage. Noah worked long hours, and Amber spent her evenings organizing or looking up home projects online. I handled repairs and yard work. It wasn't perfect, but it was stable. Every now and then, Amber would give me that look, half polite, half annoyed, like she couldn't figure out why I was still around. Once she asked, "Ever thought about getting your own place?" I laughed it off, said I was saving up. The truth was, I just didn't see a reason to leave. The last few months had been rough. I was stuck in a tech support job that paid the bills, but drained my patience. I wanted something that matched my degree, something that didn't make me dread Mondays. I'd been applying quietly for months, usually during lunch breaks. Most places never replied. Then, one Monday evening, while helping Aunt Linda unload groceries, my phone buzzed with an email. Subject: Offer letter. New Horizons Tech. I opened it, read the first line, and froze. $92,000 a year. Full benefits. I must have read it 4 times before Uncle Robert noticed me standing still. "You okay?" he asked. "I got the job," I said. His face broke into a grin. "You did it, kid." He called for Aunt Linda, who nearly dropped a bag of apples when she heard. "We're celebrating," she said, already pulling ingredients out of the fridge. Noah texted a few minutes later. "Congrats, sis. Proud of you." Amber followed with, "That's wonderful news. We should celebrate as a family." For the first time in a long time, everything felt right. Aunt Linda was humming, Uncle Robert was smiling, and the house smelled like dinner. For a moment, I thought maybe things were finally turning around. I didn't know it yet, but that celebration would be the last night this house ever felt like home. Uncle Robert went all out for dinner that night. He said it was to celebrate my new job, but he just likes having a reason to cook. By 6, the whole house smelled like roasted chicken and garlic bread. Aunt Linda had set the table with the good dishes, the ones she keeps wrapped in paper most of the year, and even folded the napkins into triangles. Noah got home earlier than usual, which was already unusual. He's usually dragging himself in half dead from work, muttering about traffic. This time he was actually smiling. Amber came in behind him. Perfect hair, perfect clothes, holding a dessert box like it was a trophy. "I picked up something sweet," she said like the hero of the evening. Uncle Robert clapped me on the back. "You earned this, kid." Aunt Linda was already beaming and telling everyone how proud she was. Noah joked about borrowing money from me now, and we all laughed. It felt easy, like the old days before everyone got older and quieter. Halfway through dinner, Amber went silent. Usually she's steering every conversation, but that night she just stared at her plate, waiting for her moment. Then, as Uncle Robert started talking about fixing the deck, she put her fork down and said, "Actually, I have something to share too." Everyone turned. "I'm pregnant." The room exploded with noise. Noah jumped up, grinning like a kid, hugging her so hard her chair almost tipped. Aunt Linda cried. Uncle Robert wiped his eyes and said, "Well, I'll be damned." For a few minutes, everyone was talking at once. Names, baby showers, nursery colors. I was honestly happy for them. Noah's wanted this for a while, and seeing him that happy made me smile. I congratulated them both, and for a while, it felt like a good night. Then Amber's tone changed. She straightened up, clasped her hands on the table, and said, "There's something else we need to talk about." The noise stopped cold. She looked straight at me. "Tamara, now that we're starting a family, I think it's time you moved out." I thought she was joking. I laughed. "Move out? Why would I do that? There's plenty of space here." Amber didn't laugh. "There's space, but once the baby's here, things will change. We'll need privacy. It's not appropriate for someone outside our immediate family to be living here." Uncle Robert froze mid-bite. Aunt Linda's fork hit her plate. I tried to stay calm. "Amber, this house has 4 bedrooms. One's a cramped office, sure, but it could be a nursery by the weekend. I can help when the baby comes. I'll stay out of the way." She smiled, but it wasn't friendly. "It's not about space, Tamara. It's about boundaries. I'll be recovering, feeding the baby, moving around however I need to. I can't do that with another person in the house." That word "another" landed hard. "I'm your husband's sister," I said. "You've known me for years. We've all lived together without issues." Amber crossed her arms. "Exactly. It's gone on too long. You're almost 30. Don't you think it's time you stood on your own? It's not healthy to depend on family forever." Uncle Robert's face went red. "Amber, that's enough." She ignored him. "No, it's not. Everyone's been thinking it. I'm just saying it out loud. She's been living here like it's her own place. We're starting our family, and it's not fair to keep sharing space like this." Noah shifted uncomfortably. "Babe, maybe not now." Amber cut him off. "Why not now? I want peace in this home. I can't have that with someone else taking up space meant for my child." I clenched my jaw. "Amber, I help pay for things. She scoffed. "What bills? You don't pay rent." That hit me harder than I expected. "That's not how this house works," I said quietly. She leaned forward, voice sharp. "Maybe that's the problem. Maybe it should." Noah looked down at his plate, not saying a word. That silence from him hurt more than anything she'd said. Aunt Linda finally spoke up. "Amber, that's rude. This is Tamara's home, too." Amber turned to her with that fake, polite smile she uses when she's about to twist the knife. "I know, Aunt Linda, but it's not normal for a grown woman to live like this. You've even said it's crowded. You want things calm once the baby's here, right?" Aunt Linda's face fell. Amber had used her words against her perfectly. Uncle Robert slammed his palm on the table. "Enough, Amber. You don't talk to family that way in my house." "Our house," she shot back, stressing the word. "Our family's house, and I'm part of it now." Noah finally looked up. "She's not wrong, Uncle. Maybe Tamara should start looking for her own place. It's time." It felt like the air got sucked out of the room. I stared at my brother. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Uncle Robert's voice dropped low. "Noah, remember whose roof you're under." Amber stood, chair scraping the floor. "You're all making me the bad guy for saying what's obvious. I'm not living like this once the baby's here." She took her plate to the sink, rinsed it, then turned back with a tight smile. "We'll talk later." She walked upstairs like she hadn't just set fire to the table. Noah followed her, without a word. Uncle Robert rubbed his face. Aunt Linda reached for my hand, but I just shook my head. The smell of roasted chicken suddenly made me sick. When Noah came back down, he said quietly, "She didn't mean it like that." I nodded once, stood up, and started clearing plates. No one spoke again the rest of the night. But dinner the next night felt like a meeting, not a meal. Uncle Robert told everyone to sit down, said we needed to clear the air. I knew exactly what that meant, so I went upstairs, grabbed the thick manila folder from my desk, and brought it with me. Amber started first, because of course she did. "I just want to make sure we're all being realistic," she said. "We can't build a family in a house that doesn't feel like ours. I shouldn't have to tiptoe around someone else in my own home." Uncle Robert's jaw tightened. "It's not just your home." She smiled in that fake, sweet way. "Well, it's not exactly Tamara's either. She's just staying here temporarily. It's been what, 7 years now?" I didn't even bother looking at her. I put the folder on the table, flipped it open, and said, "Let's make something clear before this goes any further." The sound of the papers hitting the table made everyone pause. Inside were old check copies, bank statements, and the house deed. I pushed the first stack toward Uncle Robert. "These," I said, "are 14 months of checks I wrote to Uncle Robert and Aunt Linda after Mom and Dad died. 14 months, $76,500. Total. I'd added up what market rent, utilities, and groceries would have cost me alone and tried to pay it forward. Grief math, and too much. Not one of them was ever cashed." Aunt Linda's hands went still. Her eyes got glassy. "Oh, Tamara." Uncle Robert's voice was low but steady. "We couldn't take money for helping family, kiddo. You needed a home. That was never about money." Amber let out a small, mocking laugh. "That's touching and all, but what does that have to do with anything right now?" I looked her straight in the eye. "Everything. Because that money, along with my parents' life insurance, $400,000, paid for this house. Every cent of it. I bought it 7 years ago for $275. The rest went into repairs, taxes, and an emergency fund." Her fake smile twitched. "Wait, are you saying you own this house?" "I'm not saying it," I replied, sliding the deed across the table. "I'm showing it." Noah blinked like he didn't understand the words. "Hold on, you never told me that." "I didn't think I needed to. We're family. I didn't see a reason to brag about paperwork." Amber's expression hardened fast. "You never said you owned it. Everyone called it the family house." Uncle Robert sighed. "Because that's what we are, a family. Didn't think we needed to spell out who paid what." Amber turned to Noah. "So all this time we've been living under her roof like tenants." Her tone was sharp enough to cut glass. I leaned forward slightly. "You've been living in your brother-in-law's home." "Yes, a home you just told me I didn't belong in." Amber's eyes narrowed. "That's manipulative. I didn't mean it like that. You said you wanted me gone because this wasn't your house. Now you know the truth. It's not yours at all." Noah ran a hand through his hair. "Tamara, you should have said something sooner. People already think it's weird you still live here. They ask me about it all the time." I kept my tone even. "I didn't realize your coworkers got to vote on where I live." He frowned. "You know how it looks." "I don't care how it looks," I said flatly. "I care about what's real. I thought we were a household, not a scoreboard." Amber scoffed loudly. "That's easy to say when you're sitting on the deed." I looked right at her. "Amber, you've been here 3 years and already talk like you built this place. You rearrange furniture, pick colors, and act like the rest of us are lucky to breathe your air. I've kept quiet to keep peace, but not anymore. You don't get to lecture me about ownership or boundaries in a house I paid for." Her jaw clenched. "You're unbelievable. You think throwing money around makes you superior?" "No," I said calmly, "but it does mean I don't answer to someone who just showed up and started making demands." Noah's voice rose slightly. "Hey, that's my wife you're talking to." "And she's talking to me like I'm a squatter in my own home," I shot back. Uncle Robert raised a hand. "Enough. Both of you." He looked at Amber. "You owe this woman an apology." Amber laughed under her breath. "For what? Being honest." Aunt Linda looked heartbroken. "Amber, please, you've crossed a line." Amber stood abruptly, chair scraping hard against the tile. "No. What's crossed the line is everyone acting like I'm the problem. I'm not apologizing for wanting a real home for my child." I stayed seated, calm but firm. "You already have one, Amber. You're just not in charge of it." Her face went pale, then red. "You'll regret talking to me like that." "I don't regret standing my ground," I said. "Not anymore." The room went quiet again. Noah stared at the table, not saying a word. Aunt Linda looked like she wanted to cry. Uncle Robert leaned back slowly, rubbing his temples. All right, he muttered. We've said enough for one night. Amber stormed upstairs, her heels hitting the steps like hammer strikes. Noah hesitated, then followed. The door slammed not long after. I gathered the papers back into the folder, slid the deed to the top, and stood up. That's settled, I said quietly. Aunt Linda touched my arm. Tamara, are you sure this was the right way? Yeah, I said. It was past due. Uncle Robert nodded once. No argument left in him. I went upstairs, locked my door, and set the folder on my desk. I thought about calling a friend to crash on her couch for a night, just in case things got ugly. Instead, I left my phone on silent and sat by the window. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a guest in my own home. Work the next day dragged. I couldn't focus. My brain kept replaying Amber's voice, Noah's silence, and Uncle Robert's face from the night before. By 5, I shut my laptop, grabbed my bag, and decided I was done thinking about it. Uncle Robert and Aunt Linda were visiting friends that evening, so the house should have been quiet. Only Amber's car sat in the driveway when I pulled in. The porch light flickered like always. Everything looked normal until I slid my key into the lock and it didn't turn. I tried again. The key jammed halfway. Then I noticed it. A brand new lock. My gut tightened. I circled around to the back door. Same story. Fresh lock, new handle, metal shavings on the steps. That's when I knew she'd actually changed the locks. As I was checking the windows, one upstairs slid open. Amber leaned out, arms crossed, wearing that smug little smile. You can't come in, she said. I changed the locks. I stared up. You did what? You heard me. You can't kick a pregnant woman out of her home. This is my house now. You're not welcome here. I kept my voice level. Amber, open the door. You've got 30 seconds before I call the police. She laughed. Go ahead. I'll tell them you threatened me. Then she slammed the window shut. I stood there a few seconds, breathing slow. The porch light buzzed overhead. Then I walked back to my car, pulled the deed folder from the glove box, and dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? My name's Tamara Moore, I said. I'm the legal owner of a house. Someone who lives here changed the locks and locked me out. The dispatcher asked for the address and told me to wait. Officers are on the way. Don't try to enter. I sat in my car, watching the windows. A shadow moved upstairs, her pacing, probably thinking she'd won. 20 minutes later, a patrol car pulled up. 2 officers stepped out, calm and professional. This was a civil standby. They weren't there to take sides, just to keep the peace while I got back inside. One nodded to me. Evening, ma'am. You the homeowner? Yes, Tamara Moore, I said, handing over the folder. Deed, ID, and tax records. My brother's wife changed the locks. He flipped through the papers, nodded. All right. You live here full-time? 7 years. Anyone else inside? My brother's wife. Maybe him too. My uncle and aunt are out. The officer sighed like he'd seen it before. Okay. She can't legally lock you out. We'll make sure you get inside. They walked up and knocked hard. Police, open the door. After a pause, Amber opened it. Her hand rested on her stomach like a shield. Thank God you're here, she said quickly. I'm pregnant and scared. She's trying to throw me out. The older officer raised his hand. Ma'am, we verified ownership. This property belongs to Ms. Moore. You can't change the locks on the owner. That's unlawful exclusion. Amber's face tightened. That's not fair. My husband and I live here too. You may live here, the officer said, but you're not the owner. You're not being evicted tonight, but you can't bar her from entry, unlock the door, or hand over the keys. Her jaw clenched. You can't make me. The younger officer stepped forward. We can, or we file a report for illegal lockout. Your choice. Amber muttered something under her breath, then opened the door wider. The officer turned to me. You can enter, Ms. Moore. If you want her gone permanently, you'll need a formal eviction. Understood, I said, walking past her. Amber glared, but didn't speak. The older cop looked between us. No more lock changes, shouting, or threats. If we get another call, someone's leaving in cuffs. They left a few minutes later. Amber stood by the stairs, arms crossed, eyes full of hate. You try this again, I said quietly, and next time it'll be permanent. She didn't answer, just turned and stomped upstairs. I checked the doors and windows, making sure everything was secure, then sat at the kitchen table. 10 minutes later, Noah's car pulled in. He walked in looking tired. What happened? Your wife changed the locks. Police handled it. You called the cops, he snapped. Yes, I said evenly. She crossed a line. She's pregnant, Tamara. You could have... I handled it, I cut in. You both live here because I allow it. Don't forget that again. He didn't answer. By 10, a locksmith had rekeyed every door. I handed Noah a new key and left one for Amber on the hall table in a labeled envelope. I kept the spares with the deed. The house went quiet. Same creaky floors, same porch light, same smell of last night's dinner. But everything felt different now. It wasn't our house anymore. It was mine again. Uncle Robert and Aunt Linda came home while I was still sitting at the kitchen table, paperwork spread out beside me. Aunt Linda noticed the new locks first. Tamara, what happened? I told them everything. Amber changing the locks, me calling the police, her acting like the victim, just the facts, nothing extra. Uncle Robert's face tightened. When I finished, he stood up. You did what I should have done months ago, he said. That woman's been testing limits since day one. Aunt Linda looked heartbroken. We should have been here. It's handled, I said calmly, but we all knew it wasn't. The next morning, the house was quiet but heavy. Noah's truck was gone. Amber's shoes by the door. Aunt Linda made breakfast like always, but nobody talked. Upstairs, a door slammed. Amber came down a few minutes later, grabbed coffee, and left without looking at anyone. The next few days were worse. No yelling, just cold silence. Noah avoided me. Amber kept to herself except for the sticky notes she left about shared spaces and boundaries. Aunt Linda finally said one night while washing dishes, "She's trying to push you out, Tamara." I know, I said. I'm just waiting to see how far she'll go. It didn't take long. That Friday, I came home from work and something smelled different. Bleach. The kitchen looked too clean. I opened the fridge and stopped. Half my groceries were gone and my meal prep containers were missing. A note on the fridge read, "We need space for baby supplies. Hope you understand." I set the note on the counter. The pantry was the same. My food shoved aside, replaced with baby formula and wipes. Then I saw boxes in the living room. My boxes. Amber and Noah were sorting through them like it was moving day. Amber looked up, smiling like she was doing me a favor. "We're reorganizing," she said. "You have your room upstairs. We need to make the house ready for the baby." Noah didn't look up, just kept folding blankets. I stood there a moment. "You're packing my things in my house." Amber crossed her arms. "We're setting boundaries. This place isn't just for you anymore. Once the baby's here, things will change." "You're right," I said, walking past her. "I took my parents' photo from one of the boxes and put it back on the shelf. You just made them change." Noah started. "Come on, sis." I cut him off. "You let her talk down to everyone for months. Now you're letting her touch my stuff. That's the last line." Amber scoffed. "You can't kick your brother out. Be serious." I met her eyes. "Watch me." Her smirk faded. "I'm serving a 30-day notice to quit tomorrow," I said. "Both of you." Noah stood up. "You can't do that." "I can," I said, "and I will." I turned and went upstairs. The next morning, I went to the courthouse civil division window when they opened. I filled out a 30-day notice to quit for Noah and Amber. No court filing yet. The clerk checked my deed, ID, and proof of residence, stamped the forms, and I hired a process server at lunch. That evening, a man in a gray jacket knocked at our door. Amber answered. He handed her an envelope. 30-day notice to quit. You've been served." Her face went red. "You can't do this," she shouted, spinning toward me. "You're throwing us out. We're family." I didn't move. "You called me an outsider, remember? Now it's official." Noah came down the stairs, pale. "Tamara, you'd really evict your own brother?" "You let your wife lock me out of my house," I said evenly. "This isn't about family. It's about respect." Amber's voice sharpened. "You think owning a house makes you a woman?" I didn't blink. "No, knowing when to draw the line does." Amber crumpled the envelope in her hand and stormed upstairs. Noah stayed for a moment, staring at the floor. "You didn't have to do this." "I didn't want to," I said. "You made it necessary." He left without another word. Aunt Linda came out quietly, towel in hand. "It had to happen," she said. Uncle Robert nodded. "You gave them every chance." I looked around the room. My house finally in order. "Yeah," I said. "Now I'm just following through." The rest of the night was silent. No fights, no noise, just peace. For the first time in years, I felt like I actually lived in my own home. But the 30-day notice gave them 30 days. If they didn't leave after that, I'd file an unlawful detainer and let the court handle it. The house was silent the first week. No arguments, no slammed doors, just tension thick enough to choke on. Amber barely left the bedroom except to glare at me when she passed through the kitchen. Noah avoided me altogether. I didn't chase conversation. I left early for work, came home late, and kept to myself. It wasn't about being cold, it was about peace. For once, I didn't owe anyone explanations. Uncle Robert and Aunt Linda stayed quiet too. They moved softly through the house, cooked simple meals, and acted like guests, even though they'd been there longer than Amber ever had. Every night, Aunt Linda would say the same thing before heading upstairs. "We'll get through this tomorrow. Just stay calm." I always answered the same way. "I already am." By the second week, Amber started up her small acts of defiance again, blasting the TV late at night, leaving her dishes in the sink, accidentally blocking my car in the driveway. I ignored her completely. She wanted a reaction. I wasn't giving her one. Noah tried the guilt route. One evening, he caught me outside after work, standing by the mailbox. "You know she's stressed, right?" he said. "You could have handled this differently." I didn't even look up from the envelopes in my hand. "She changed my locks, Noah." He sighed. "You embarrassed her, calling the cops, filing eviction papers. That's family you're talking about. Family doesn't turn on each other." "Family doesn't break into your house and throw out your food," I said flatly. "She's pregnant, Tamara. She's not thinking straight." "So she gets to disrespect everyone and I just take it?" I asked. "You're her husband. You should have stopped her before I had to." His voice dropped. "You're really going to kick us out?" "I didn't want to," I said. "You made it happen." He stared at me for a few seconds, then walked back inside without another word. After that, things got quieter. No more guilt trips, no more games, just the countdown. The last week was awkward. They started packing in silence, moving boxes one by one. I could hear them whispering upstairs at night, their voices sharp and tired. Every now and then, Amber would come down to grab a drink or move something, but she never said a word to me. She didn't need to. The hatred on her face said enough. Aunt Linda tried to make things easier. She cooked extra for everyone and made sure the common spaces stayed clean. Uncle Robert stayed mostly in his workshop out back, avoiding conflict altogether. We were just waiting out the clock. 2 days before the deadline, I came home to find the driveway half empty. Their cars were loaded with boxes. Noah was standing by the porch, sweating, tired, eyes hollow. Amber was already sitting in the passenger seat, arms folded tight, face turned away. I walked past them toward the front door, keys in hand. "You all set?" Noah nodded. "We're leaving tonight." Amber spoke without looking at me. "You'll regret this." I didn't respond. I unlocked the door and went inside. Noah lingered at the doorway. "You know, Mom and Dad would have wanted us to stick together." I stopped, hand on the doorframe. "Mom and Dad would have wanted you to respect the house they helped pay for." He didn't argue. He just looked at the floor, then turned and walked out. The sound of the car engine filled the air, then faded down the street. And just like that, they were gone. Aunt Linda stood behind me, her voice soft. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said. "Better than before." We didn't celebrate. We just cleaned. The next morning, the house was spotless. No clutter, no tension. It felt lighter, like it could finally breathe again. That weekend, Uncle Robert and Aunt Linda sat me down at the kitchen table. Aunt Linda folded her hands. "We want to stay here full time," she said. "We'll pay our share of everything, no arguments." I started to protest, but Uncle Robert cut in. "It's not charity, Tamara, it's fairness. You've carried this house long enough. Let us do our part." I looked at them, two people who had stepped up for me when I had no one else, and nodded. Deal. From that day, they weren't guests anymore. They were home. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into work. My new job was challenging but steady. Long hours, new faces, real structure. I liked it. I came home tired but not drained. For once, my life felt like mine. One evening, I was reorganizing the kitchen drawers when I found an old recipe book buried under a stack of takeout menus. It was my mom's, the same one she used to write notes in. I flipped through it, and a folded paper slipped out. It was a letter. The ink was faded, but her handwriting was clear. "Tamara, if you're reading this, it means life moved faster than I wanted it to. Don't confuse generosity with erasing yourself. Helping people is good. Losing yourself to do it isn't. Love, Mom." I stood there for a while, just staring at her words. Not sad, not angry, just settled. I put the letter back between the pages and slid the book onto the shelf. Aunt Linda called from the living room asking if I wanted tea. I told her yes. When I sat down, Uncle Robert was talking about fixing the fence out back, and Aunt Linda was knitting something small. A scarf, maybe? The TV played softly in the background. The house was quiet again. Not tense, not heavy, just peaceful. For the first time in years, it felt like home. Not because of who was in it, but because of who wasn't. 2 months passed. The house was calm again. Steady routines, quiet mornings, no tension. Uncle Robert spent most days in the backyard fixing things that didn't even need fixing, and Aunt Linda filled the kitchen with the smell of homemade bread. Life finally had rhythm. Work was going well, too. The new job kept me busy, but in a good way. Deadlines, meetings, people who talked about projects instead of gossip. I liked coming home tired, but at peace. The nights were silent, and silence finally felt like a gift. Then, one Wednesday evening, my phone buzzed while I was going through bills at the table. It was Noah. I hadn't heard from him since the day they left. The text was short. "Can we talk? Just us." I stared at the screen for a moment before typing back. "Where?" He sent the name of a small diner near the highway, one we used to stop at when we were kids. I agreed. When I got there, Noah was already sitting at a corner booth, hands around a half-empty cup of coffee. He looked thinner, worn down. The circles under his eyes said everything before he even opened his mouth. "Hey," he said quietly. I nodded and sat across from him. "You said you wanted to talk." He rubbed his face. "Things have been rough. Rent's killing us. Amber's not working right now. The baby's up all night. It's a lot." I listened. He kept talking mostly about bills and how expensive everything was. Then he got to the point. "I was thinking," he said carefully, "maybe we could move back in for a while, just until we get on our feet." I didn't answer right away. I just looked at him. He tried to smile. "It'd be temporary. We'd help with bills. Maybe we could all make it work again." No, I said simply. He blinked. "You didn't even think about it." "I don't need to," I said. "You made your choice." His voice rose. "You're really going to hold that over me forever? We're family, Tamara." "Family doesn't lock you out of your own house," I said. "Family doesn't stand there and watch it happen." He shook his head. "Amber was wrong, okay? But you didn't have to go nuclear. You called the cops. You filed eviction papers. You made us look like criminals." "I didn't make you look like anything," I said calmly. "You did that yourselves." He leaned forward. "You've changed, Tamara. You're cold now. Mom and Dad would be ashamed." That one hit hard, but I didn't flinch. Mom and Dad left me this house to build a life, not to spend it cleaning up someone else's mess. He went quiet, staring down at the table. For a few seconds, the only sound was the hum of the coffee machine behind the counter. Then he said, "What if we made it fair? Split ownership. Put the house under Dad's name or something. Keep it in the family." I let out a small breath. "It's already in the family, Noah. You just don't live there anymore." He looked up, angry now. "So that's it? You're just done with me?" "I'm done being disrespected," I said. "You crossed a line that doesn't get crossed twice." He sat back, shaking his head. "You'll regret this." "I won't," I said. "You'll just have to find your own way like everyone else." Neither of us spoke for a while after that. Finally, he stood up, tossed a few dollars on the table, and said, "You're not the sister I grew up with." I watched him walk out. "I know," I said under my breath. "That one didn't let people take advantage of her." When I got home, the house was dark except for the kitchen light. Uncle Robert was fixing the hinge on a cabinet, and Aunt Linda was tending to a small plant by the window. "Everything all right?" Uncle Robert asked without looking up. "Yeah," I said. "Just saw Noah." He gave a slow nod. "He's still trying to drag you into something." "Yeah," I said softly, "but I'm done trying to save him." "That's good," he said. "You can't fix people who refuse to learn." Aunt Linda turned from the window. "He'll realize it one day. Maybe not soon, but he will." "Maybe," I said, "but it won't change anything." She smiled sadly. "You're stronger than you think, Tamara." I didn't answer. I just sat at the table, sorting through the stack of bills and organizing them into a new binder I'd labeled that morning. House records. Deed, utilities, receipts, insurance. Everything in order. Uncle Robert tested the cabinet door. "Perfect," he said. Aunt Linda went back to her plant, humming softly. Outside, the sky was fading into orange and gray. The air through the window smelled like cut grass and rain. It was quiet again, peaceful, not empty, just steady. I closed the binder, placed it neatly on the counter, and looked around the kitchen. Clean, warm, mine. "Real family respects the line you draw," I said quietly. "And if they don't," I paused, watching the last bit of light fade through the window. "You draw it anyway."